Generation Orange. You guys, this was not the way I thought this season was going to go. This was not the episode or the podcast that I thought we were going to be making. I thought that for sure we were going to be doing these bi-weekly streams up until the first and second week of February, and I am unpleasantly surprised that we have to be here right now to discuss what happened on Sunday, which was, I don't really know how to describe it. Geno family, you can let us know in the comments how you feel about it. But I do know that if we all have one thing in common, it's disappointment. Sunday was tough, and we've got a lot of stuff to discuss today, but I think we should start, and I'm sure it'll be relatively brief because Geno family, I know Broncos country, you have discussed this or thought about this over and over and over again. So I don't want to spend too much time harping on the game itself, but a few key points, of course, we have to discuss. First of all, let's just start with this. Dad, how are you feeling?
I'm hanging in there. How about you, kiddo?
I'm hanging in there as well. It's, there's a weird part of me, and I know that I'm the odd one out on this, so I'll just say that to begin. There's a weird part of me that almost feels like the Bo injury maybe even hurt a little bit more than this. Of course, my team getting eliminated, it sucks, especially because the expectations were so high, even with Jarrett Stidham. But what this loss told me more than anything was Bo is the guy. And of course, for you and I, Dad, there was no question about that. But of course, there were, the skeptics out there. But this was just the nail in the coffin, or I guess the icing on the cake is the better phrase to use, that Bo is the guy. And if Bo was suited up, if number 10 was out there, we would be having a very, very different discussion right now. And that's not.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, there's so many things, that this game could have gone either way, but just to see Bo mixing it up in the snow, I like our chances,
Yeah. And me saying
it would have been something.
How unfortunate it is that Bo wasn't playing, I want to make it very clear that I'm not necessarily blaming that game on Jarrett Stidham. I think, you can watch it and maybe assume that that's why the Broncos lost, old backup quarterback. I don't actually blame that game on Jarrett Stidham. If there is an order of blame to be had, Jarrett Stidham doesn't even make my top 3. So we'll discuss it all. But first things first, my dad and I were there. We were in Mile High. It was awesome. I want to start out with something positive, and that is it was awesome. It has been a dream of mine, and I'm sure a dream of yours, Dad, for a long time, to see a snow game at Mile High, and it was really a dream come true, regardless of the outcome, to just be there, watching our team grinding it out with a rival of the ages, if I might say, in the Patriots. So that, in and of itself, was an incredible experience.
Yes, indeed. Indeed it was. Something we will never forget, and I think we'll be back there for a playoff game in the not-too-distant future, But, yeah, goodness, and it's funny you mentioned how I can't help but wonder. I know for me, I have just been kind of steering clear of some of the football stuff the last few days, or something comes up on my feed. I'm just like, whatever. I don't think there's some people that aren't even going to watch this, and I don't blame them, Having said all that, and we talked about it after the game. There was a lot of things going in there with Stiddy. We knew the rest of the team really needed to step up, right? Or Stiddy needed, and Stiddy needed to, take care of the football. And really, a lot of those things didn't happen. The defense played outstanding. Really, the offense, they were dropping balls, missing blocks, missed kicks. Stidham had the big turnover that we didn't want him to have. And when it's all said and done, they were still competitive. So it's tough, obviously, but and at the same time, and I'm not going to totally agree with what you said. I think the loss hit me harder than the Bo thing, but to me, it was kind of like a slow death, if you will. We're on the highest high after Buffalo, and then literally a few minutes later, we hear about Bo. It's like, oh. And then we're like, okay, well, we still got to go to battle, right? We got a shot at this thing, right? And so maybe we can get JK back. We get hopes about that, and then that That doesn't come through. We get into the game, we're about to maybe get a 10-point lead or maybe even a 14-point lead. Of course, we can talk about the 4th-and-1 call. Everybody else already has. But so anyway, we're in that game, and it really looks winnable. I mean, we're controlling the line of scrimmage. We're moving the ball. They're not, right? And then, so then, and then yet it ends, and then so we're just out, and that's it. And hey, we've always talked about it. If you want to win a Super Bowl, you have to have a good team. You have to have good coaching. You have to stay healthy, And at the end of that game, we're out our starting quarterback. We're out our dynamic running back, which we'd been out a few weeks, but still. And then we're out one of our wide receivers, and we could barely get 2 yards in a play. So there's a lot. I mean, I guess we should probably talk about the running game or lack thereof, right? Oh, we
We
can't
should.
forget.
Go ahead.
I don't want to forget to talk about the hat we saw as we were exiting the stadium.
That's
Remember the hat that
exactly
girl had?
where I was going. And this is kind of my thesis for the game. So let me rant just for a minute or two. What my dad is referring
Rant
to
away.
is we saw a young lady with probably the best hat I've ever seen in my life. And if anyone wants to send me a late Christmas present, this is what I want. Very simple, no team colors, no nothing like that. But you could very much tell that this was directed at the Broncos, and it was a black hat, white colors. And guess what it said? Broncos country. It said, "Run the effing ball."
I think it was run the damn ball.
Either way, if I was gonna make the hat custom, I would have used some more colorful language. And even just thinking
Yeah.
about all the different streams that we've had and all the conversations that we've had, Dad, somehow it seems like the single person that's had the most impact on this Broncos team has not been Bo Nix, has not been J.K. Dobbins, has not been PS2. It's been Sean Payton. And it's been his decision making all throughout the season, which I think we had to a lot of the times kind of justify or make sense of his plan, which is fine. He's got a much greater football mind than you and I, or probably any of the people that are watching this. But that being said, again, I'm not going to sit here and say that I've got a better football decision making process than Sean Payton does, but here's how I see it, because of course the 4th-and-1 call is going to come up. Like you said, everyone's talked about it. Everyone says you shouldn't have gone for it. You should have kicked the field goal. I actually don't dislike the decision to go for it on 4th-and-1. I think Sean Payton said this in the presser after the game. Hey, we had good momentum, and the offense was they were looking good. It was a good drive going into the half. They knew that they had the sun at the time, and it was an opportunity to go up 14-0 in the AFC Championship game at home when your defense is playing out of their mind. And so that's all that is to say. That's why I don't actually disagree with the decision to go for it on 4th-and-1. And I actually even think 1 is generous. It could have been inches or feet, but I do strongly disagree with the decision to run anything other than the ball up the gut. To me,
Yeah.
and I know that the Pats D line, they are physical, they're big, but my opinion on this is, in that situation, if you're going to go for it, there's only one thing that you do, and it's you put your guys up against their guys, and that's it. This isn't the time to outsmart or play
Be
some little
cute.
trickery or some tomfoolery.
Yeah.
No, this is the time you stack the freaking box and you put your guys up against their guys. We've got probably one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines in the league. I don't care if Stidham takes it himself and pulls a little, Matthew Stafford cute up over launches himself over the offensive. I don't care. Run the rock. And I think listen, hindsight's 2020. But that to me is a football 101 decision that I don't think I can ever let Sean off the hook for.
I agree. And I will say this. I can understand not going for the quarterback sneak. Reasons being, I mean, we're already down to our 2, okay? You don't want to go down to our 3. And secondly, Bo is just more of a natural athlete and accustomed to that. He's in football. I don't know that Stidham. I can see not doing the QB sneak pretty much ever in this game, unless it's 4th and a foot in 4th quarter or something. I'm okay with that. But I totally agree with you. You don't run a pass play. You either run it up the gut or you kick the rock. Now, this kind of full circles back to our original point with the girl wearing the hat, she probably had that hat made a few weeks ago at the very.
Yeah.
This has been a common theme, right? We've talked about it, even with our little football brains. We've been like, well, why don't we try to establish that running game, even with RJ Harvey and McLaughlin. And Sean was questions about it in the post game presser, and he was humble enough to, and even into the end of season presser that they had, I think it was yesterday or the day before. He's mentioned that it will be a point of emphasis, and maybe that has something to do with why they fired Lombardi. I don't know, but that's another discussion, I suppose. Point is, this is something that the Broncos just didn't do this season, right? They didn't establish the run week in and week out so that they would be prepared for such a game in the playoffs with the elements, etc. The one thing I will point out to kind of defend Sean here, and I emphasize kind of, okay? Right now, and we talked about this, Bo is still a work in progress, right? And with Bo, he's very accustomed to the shotgun. I just feel like Sean has been focusing on maybe maximizing Bo's passing potential, and that's what paid the price. Now, don't get me wrong. I still think, especially in the Chief game and the Chargers game and those Raiders games when we were shutting down the playbook, as we have so repeatedly pointed out, wasn't that a time to just kind of add a few more carries to the game plan? And I'm not talking about RPOs or Bo carrying. I'm talking about, like you said, lining up our guys on their guys and running right at them. If you do that over and over, you get good at it. And then when you face 4th and 1 in a playoff game, you got a good chance to get it that way. So, yeah, that part is extremely frustrating.
I think that,
and so,
the running game in football, this is not even just to the Broncos. This is the league and the NFL or football just broadly. The running game is one thing that doesn't really change. There's so many conversations these days about, like, for instance, I think a good example is DPI and how often they call it, right? To the point where you literally have OCs or head coaches accounting for that in their game plan, right? How many times this year, it's 3rd and long, the Denver defense is about to get a big stop. If you're an OC, what's on your radar? Oh, let's go deep one-on-one with Riley Moss if it's available. That's a good game plan. Anyways, my point is like all these things change with the game, the route tree, just offensive scheming in general. But I feel like running the ball, it's pretty cut and dry, right? It's just you got your running back, you give him the ball, and you try to put your best guys up there to block for him, right? That's really the only thing where it gets a little fancy. But otherwise, it's exactly what it seems, is you run the football. It doesn't change. And I agree with you. If this was something, and of course, JK being injured set the Broncos back, I think. And maybe the season-long plan was greater with him in mind. But to me, with JK hurt, you run the ball even more. You run the ball even more with Harvey. You run the ball even more with McLaughlin. You get them all the touches as humanly possible. We got as I said earlier, one of the best offensive lines in football. And to not see that being used or fostered in the right way the whole season is really frustrating, especially when it comes to a head in a game like this where even throw the 4th and 1 out the window, throw the lateral pass out the window. You still could have won that game just by running the ball. With 2 missed field goals, you could have won the game by running the ball.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots stuck with the run, and they weren't even running it effectively. And it kind of, I had this thought as well. And, hey, we're going to dog on Sean a little bit. He is an outstanding coach. We're lucky to have him. We're not, here at Generation Orange, we're not what some of those yahoos, and some people are saying, you fire Sean Payton. We're not those guys. But I couldn't help but think back to our last Super Bowl run where We had the mighty Gary Kubiak, who probably doesn't get his credit as a great head coach, who knew what he had. He had a great defense, and he played to that defense. He game planned to that defense. We generated some points early on in the AFC Championship game against the Patriots. A couple nice drives, and then they just grinded it out from then. In the Super Bowl, first drive, they go down the field. They don't get a touchdown, but they get a field goal. Okay, they're up 3-0. And then, of course, Vaughn makes the big play, put us up 10-0, and then it was all right. And literally after that, they probably didn't try anything cute. They would just grind, and it worked. They won. So the point is, yeah, and hindsight is 2020. They didn't. We were looking at the weather updates all the time, to see if we didn't know the snow was coming until it came, right? And so, and I do think that fourth down call, and I'm not saying this, we're not defending the call. It's just like, it's kind of crazy to me how overly broken down it has been, because as soon as we got to 4th and 1, you and I looked at each other and said, okay, yeah, we're going for it. It wasn't like any,
No,
we knew
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, there was no surprise. This is the NFL right now, So, now, having said that, yeah, could we have? Yeah, kicking, I would not have complained, and it would have been a prudent and smart move, of course, in hindsight. But even in real time, because, and we've talked about this before. If you're going for it on 4th, if you're going for 2, know that you're gonna have a reason, have a play that you just have reason to believe will work, right? Have the line of scrimmage established so that you have reason to get it. And I don't think, they had established the line of scrimmage well enough to know that. And then, okay, so call the right play. And obviously that was not the right play, and you also have to consider you're leaning on your backup quarterback. This was a situation where we wanted to protect Stiddy, right? We wanted him we know he's got to make a few throws, but we want to put as little pressure on him as possible. So yeah, a lot of reasons to just kick it there. But anyway, there's not much more to say about that call that the rest of the world hasn't already said, right?
Right. And even then, there are other reasons. With a game this close and so low scoring, there are other things that could have gone our way or could have been different. For instance, you can't miss field goals in the AFC Championship game. And of course, Will Lutz, I don't want to, dog on him too much, because he has been money and he has been clutch for the Denver Broncos basically all year. And kicking, especially that position, is, I would say, 75% a mental thing. And whatever happened, at least on the first missed field goal, is beyond me. Patriots missed one as well. I heard, and I don't even know if there's any way that this can ever be confirmed, but I did hear that the one that was tipped potentially could have been lined up about a yard short because of the snow. Like they couldn't see the hash marks, and they actually spotted the ball incorrectly, which of course would make sense that the D end was able to get his hand on that. But that being said, my point is not necessarily to dog on Will Lutz, but just to say that any one thing could have gone a different way, and we would be having a very different conversation.
For sure. Yeah, I'm with you on Lutz. I mean, the one he missed was like a 54-yarder. The other one was blocked. I mean, and if we kicked the one that was like extra point range, he probably would have hit that, right? It was a team effort. We had guys dropping balls. We had guys missing blocks. Really, other than the defense, it was, it wasn't too good. And yet somehow it was a close game.
I know.
Another thing I think is I think I was mentioning this to you, but the Broncos lost another AFC championship game 10-7. It was to the Buffalo Bills, probably like 91, 92 maybe. And we were in Buffalo. Elway was playing with an injury, and he wasn't playing great. Neither was Jim Kelly, by the way. It was a defensive game. And so finally at halftime, Reeves benches Elway. Kubiak comes in. And Kubiak actually played better than either of the future Hall of Fame quarterbacks as it was. That's what I remember anyway. Maybe I'm wrong. But the crazy thing is, there was that crazy touchdown the crazy play that led to the New England touchdown, right? The Stidham fireball throw or whatever you want to, we don't need to break that down. To me, whether it was called right or not, that's just him being careless with the, you just got to get rid of that earlier or whatever.
Or take the sack.
Yeah, take the sack. Right. So there was that play in that Buffalo game. There was like a tipped screen pass. Elway threw a ball that gets tipped and it gets picked, returned for a touchdown. That's the only touchdown that Buffalo got against Denver. And they would go on to win 10-7, just like New England would go on to win 10-7. So we have the distinction of being probably the only team in the history of football to win 2 championship games 10-7. So,
It's
but hey,
weird.
if there's a silver lining, there's a lot of teams that haven't even been to 2 AFC, that haven't had the luxury of winning multiple AFC championships. So
Yeah.
you got to keep it in perspective, right?
There's a lot of optimism in this discussion as well. First of all, the Broncos just getting to the championship game with a second-year quarterback and an offense that the media thought was totally dead. That's huge. The game from Buffalo, I think, told us so much more about our team than the game versus the Patriots did. And I mean, I remember having this discussion with you last year, Dad, when we made the divisional round of the playoffs and, of course, lost to Buffalo. As disappointing as that was, what did that do? It set the standard for everyone in that locker room of what the expectations are. And I don't think that that's any different this year. The only difference is now the expectation or the standard is to host an AFC championship game. And if the trend continues, which is such that you continue to get better, the Broncos will find themselves hosting another AFC championship game, I think, very soon. It is very hard. You look at all, and I want to talk about coaching next, which is why I bring this up. You look at all the different organizations in this league, and you learn a lot about each team, especially around this time of the year. And the choices that they make in head coach, who they choose to fire, how they choose to rebuild will tell you a lot about a football team. And the Broncos, comparatively, I think are actually in one of the best possible situations. Like for instance, you can look at the Raiders, right? Awful season. Everyone, they did not even meet expectations with Geno Smith and Pete Carroll. But now, they've got the first overall pick and they're going to get Fernando Mendoza. I think that the Broncos are even in a better position than that, even being at the 30th pick of the 2026 draft, because Bo Nix, 40 million extra dollars in cap space, Sean Payton and friends. The one thing that I wouldn't say I'm concerned about, because we're filming this on a Thursday evening and Vance Joseph is still in the office in Denver.
Looking good there, I think.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
That is huge. Now, Broncos country, you probably already know this, but for those of you who maybe don't know, Vance Joseph was Denver's defensive coordinator a few years ago and had a lot of success, of course, and then went on to the Arizona Cardinals to serve as their defensive coordinator, I think for 2 years after having no success really as head coach in Denver. I think he was with Arizona for 2 years.
Seems about right. I think maybe
Anyways,
he might have gone to Miami and then Arizona
right,
or something. But yeah, he was
right.
there at least 2 years, maybe 3.
But then he actually chose to come back to Denver after what I would say is a pretty ugly tenure as head coach. And we've talked about the assistant coaches before. And my philosophy on this is there are some guys out there who are just coordinators. And I say just with a lot of respect. To be an offense or a defensive coordinator or specialist in this league is a
Right.
very tall order. I think another good example of this is, hate to say it, but Josh McDaniels for the New England Patriots. That guy, not necessarily the best head coach, but
Might
is
be
he
the
one of,
worst.
right now might be one of the worst head coaches, right, ever. But he is arguably one of the best offensive minds or coordinators in the
Certainly.
game. And that is somebody who has, I don't think Josh McDaniels is going to be looking for a head coaching job anytime soon. I think he's happy where he is at offensive coordinator. My point is,
Yeah.
I think that there's a chance that Vance also, don't want to say understands that, but he might know, this is where my talents are best. This is where I'm going to have the best production, even if it might not be as much for as much money. But the good thing is about the Walter Penner ownership group here in Denver is that there's a lot of money to spend and no cap space on coach's salary.
This is true. And I do think Vance appreciates the the region of Colorado and the Broncos very much. And I do think kind of get an undertone that for obvious reason, there's some unfinished business with this Broncos team and defense, right?
Hmm.
But having said all that, I do believe Vance wants another shot at head coach, and I think he'll I think he'll likely get one eventually. And now there was a lot of, I want to say at least two, maybe three very respectable, in my opinion, Denver Broncos reporters. I want to say Benjamin Albright, Andrew Mason. I think that anyway, guys that were heavily hinting that Vance was going to go to the Arizona Cardinals. That was pretty much not necessarily a done deal, but there was a lot of tea leaves, and it kind of makes sense because for a lot of reasons, just from what we can see, right? But yeah, I think maybe because I kind of feel like that probably would have happened by now.
Hmm.
It still could, but I also would say that I think you know, maybe the Cardinals will go an offensive direction for their head coach. I mean, that's one thing that is against, Vance's chances of getting an opportunity. But I think he'll eventually get another crack. I just don't. I think there's a good chance it's not going to be this year. And good for him if because and I don't want to carry too much about the negativity because obviously this is just tough. You see how hard this team worked, particularly the defense, and how special they were, and for them to not get to finish the job, and I just want to just give you I don't know, just a little forewarning here because I know you and I know what we're going through, and you're going to be watching this wherever you are. I don't know what your plans are for the Super Bowl, but I know you're going to watch it, and it's going to hit you again. And there's going to be another pang of pain because you're going to be thinking that could have been us, you know. And so, you know, it's tough,
Well, the
and
good
the
thing is for
Broncos.
me is I have always hated the Patriots, so that's not new.
Mhm. Right, and
Um,
as have I, but we've also hated the Seahawks.
yeah, no,
I
it's
I
this
don't.
was literally, in my opinion, the worst possible Super Bowl matchup for me as a fan, for me as a media person professionally. This was the worst possible matchup was the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks. But um, that being said, that's what we got. Just a few head coaching or coordinator updates. I think you're right about Vance. Um, I would hate to see him in Arizona personally. And as somebody who, of course, I love the Broncos, feel very familiar with them. I've also covered the Cardinals before professionally, and very different organizations in terms of what they're concerned with, what their goals are, how the team and how the organization is structured. They're very different. And I think you said unfinished business. That's I think can be very relevant here because, in my opinion, if Vance Joseph is concerned with winning, if any coordinator is concerned with winning, you'd rather be with the Denver Broncos than you would rather be with the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are not a team that if I was Vance Joseph, I would think that that's too heavy of a that's too tall of an order to try and rebuild and put them into some position. Especially, I mean, just think about just plainly like in that conference, the NFC West is maybe other literally than the
Oh
AFC
yeah,
West, one of the
yeah,
most competitive divisions in football. And they went uh
certainly.
they went oh and they didn't they were defeated by every single NFC West opponent that they faced this year two times over. So I in my opinion, I'm not Vance Joseph, of course. I'm not in the interview room, but Arizona's not an attractive place for me. Um I don't know if you heard this, Dad, but about an hour ago, Chef, the report, Davis Webb withdrew from the head coaching discussion with the Raiders. So now he is
Hadn't
only
heard that. Thank you.
right. So I believe it's just the Bills and the Ravens that he has been in contact with. And Davis Webb, there's kind of a lot to unpack with this guy. First of all, the guy's young enough to play in the league. He's a young guy.
Yeah,
And number
yeah.
two is that with the Lombardi firing in Denver, the offensive coordinator being fired, which, come on, Broncos country, he wasn't calling the plays. But I think that could potentially be it comes at an interesting time, because what does that say to me if I'm Davis Webb? Oh, all of a sudden, there's this opportunity to be the offensive coordinator in Denver. I would say, I mean, I don't know this for sure, of course, but my assumption is if Davis Webb wants that job, it's vacant for him.
I think that's a good assumption, and I think you're leading this whole thing in the right direction, because yeah, there's actually a perfect scenario for the Broncos that could be, really, really good. And that's number one, keeping Vance, and number two, keeping Davis Webb, and number three, Davis Webb calling the plays. It's possible, I mean, why not? Because the mighty Sean himself, it inferred in the pressers that, I need to look into, the running game and things like that. And he has relinquished play calling duties on temporary bases multiple times before, okay, with the Saints. So it's not like he's above doing it, So yeah, maybe, that's a perfect scenario, I think. And hey, it's not to say that Sean isn't going to maybe once or two or three times in a game be like, okay, we need to run this play.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And which could be fine, because I think Sean is really good at once in a while just calling the perfect play at the perfect time.
Right.
We just want somebody to be a little more consistent play in and play out right on those early downs. So yeah, it's great to hear that he's. So it kind of looks like the Raiders are going to get Kubiak, which I hate because he's basically family, but whatever.
I think that's the only reason I would be potentially rooting for the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, is because of the Kubiak family. Of course, Clint Kubiak over there on Seattle's staff. Hopefully get to see not Vance, gosh. Hopefully get to see Vic maybe bumping around Santa Clara this upcoming week, but not holding out hope. That guy's pretty old and he's got his own stuff going on with Philly.
So speaking of withdrawing from contention, am I wrong? I think the Browns had 3 candidates withdraw.
See, Broncos country, it could be much, much worse. You could be the Browns.
You literally are the Browns swirling the toilet bowl here. I mean, this is brutal. No, and then I read the other day, I think the defensive coordinator, I can't think of his name, who's been doing a good job for the Browns. He gets all butthurt and pissed off because he got interviewed for the head coach position. Mm-hmm. They hired the OC from Baltimore, right? Which probably a better hire than I thought they could get, but whatever. And so, but then the DC, I'm sorry, I forget his name, but he's a good DC. He storms off and says his goodbyes to everybody. He's like, I'm done. One guy who was loyal, doing good work for you, you don't hire him. No, he's like the Browns. Oh my goodness. Oh, what a joke.
What a joke.
So it's just the Cardinals and the Raiders left. So we'll see. I mean,
which are out of all of the think about all the different teams that had head coaching vacancies, right? And where the big names ended up. Harbaugh going to New York. All of these different things. Out of the Raiders, yeah, of course, we definitely didn't want them in the West. Out of the Raiders and the Cardinals are literally the worst possible outcomes. If you're, in the mix for a head coaching position, out of all the teams that needed a head coach, those are the 2 places that I wouldn't want to go.
I'm pretty much in agreement. I will say, with the Raiders, you have the number 1 pick. You have a lot, like $100 million cap space.
Right.
You have Sir Tom. I don't know. I mean, we were concerned when Sir Tom joined that might kind of turn the table for them. The early results aren't good, so we'll see, right? We'll see. But I would just say at this point, the Raiders' job is probably better than the Cardinals, a little marginally better than the Cardinals' job or the Browns' job for sure. But I mean, whatever, the good news is we're going to get. I would expect the Broncos will have to do their due diligence on interviewing OCs, right?
Hmm.
But it's very likely, like as you implied, that it's Davis Webb's job if he wants it. That may have played into Lombardi's firing, and that's interesting too because Lombardi was a Peyton guy for like 15 years, and he kind of sounded off a little bit on his way out. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did. It is
So,
interesting.
you know,
But all that being said, Broncos country, we don't want to carry too much on about other teams or even the head coaching,
drama.
yeah, the drama, because what do we know? All we really do is wait for Adam Schefter to pop up on your screen on your phone, and then you think about it then. But otherwise, we can't pick that apart as well as we can pick apart uh, any game. But that being said, I think a main takeaway is Broncos country. We are in. You thought we were in a better position last year, right? And that's because you knew that Bo was the guy. You finally got a quarterback. You got the head coach. All these things are going right. And then look at the production that you got this year. I would say overall, this was a great season for the Denver Broncos. And now you're even in a better position because you've got all these guys who are well seasoned. You've got a well oiled machine. You've got 40 million extra dollars in cap space now to do whatever with whatever you please. You still got the head coach and you got the quarterback. And the history will tell you that that's what you need to build a winning organization. Now, the Broncos are going to run into some interesting uh, predicaments or situations with free agents. And I think that's kind of one of the caveats that you get when you have such good depth, especially on the defense. Somebody that comes to mind is Justin Stranad, somebody who we might potentially have to say goodbye to because those guys want to start. They want to play a lot of snaps. They want to start in this league. And when you have depth, obviously for fans, it's great, right? Because Alex Singleton gets hurt, no worries, because this guy can pick up where he left off. But if you're a player, that's a little bit more frustrating because it means that you have the talent or you have what it takes to start in this league, but you're not getting your opportunities because someone else is there. Just several notable free agents or guys who will be available. But on the other side of that, there are lots of guys who want to come back. I know J.K. Dobbins has said publicly that he wants to come back with the Broncos. That's awesome. I think Evan Ingram is somebody that you can probably circle as potentially coming back to Denver. Even Von Miller has publicly stated he wants to come back to Denver. Denver is a desirable place to be, and that will work in our favor this offseason.
Yeah, I agree. We're definitely, and it's just so weird. I guess we've been generally we've been spoiled as Bronco fans. When free agency first started in the early '90s, we had John Elway, so it was like we were all since the beginning, since the inception of free agency, we were a desirable spot. When you first got into being a hardcore Bronco fan and kind of understanding it, we had Peyton Manning, and guess what? Free agents wanted to come to
Right.
Denver.
Right.
That's a big deal, and not only do they want to come? You can likely get them at a little bit better price. You can retain your guys more, at a real, and not a whole lot different, but that every few $1,000s adds up, and so yeah, that's a big deal. So yeah, plenty to be excited about. It's just there's just that process of getting through this. This team was so good, and they had a, it it's at the end, and we've had teams like this. The Broncos have had really good teams that you know looked as good as anybody going down the stretch. It's just and that didn't win it all, but to just to go out like this and you were just never going to know. I mean, but you know what? Deserves got nothing to do with it.
Right. That's absolutely
It's the
true.
game. The game is the game. Guys get hurt, and I would, and I think we were talking about this at the time, and I was thinking it. Even had they manufactured and got out of there with a win, one way or the other, to say a couple kicks go through, whatever, right? Win that game. It was still going to be a process to. I think we saw enough out of Stidham to know that, he wasn't terribly comfortable playing football,
Hmm.
in a real game.
He wasn't
And,
going to get that $60 million contract that I think
right.
we thought he might if he won two
Yes.
games in a row.
Right. Right. So it would have been, I mean, obviously we would definitely trade that for what we got, but hey, you know, every year there's 32 teams that start and only one that's fan base is happy,
Right.
so we're just, you know,
Yep. And this is about, in my opinion, this is about as happy as you can be without winning the Super Bowl. So, that being said, Broncos country, we would
yeah,
love to hear from you guys. We would love to hear about your AFC championship watching experience. We would love to hear about what you think about coming into Super Bowl 60, Santa Clara. It's exciting, I suppose, if you're anyone other than us. Who are you rooting for? Because that's it's an interesting spot for Broncos fans, right? Because you don't want to root for the Patriots who just eliminated us, but then you don't want to root for the Seahawks who kicked our butt about 10 years ago. So let us know what your justification is for that, because I personally would like some. I need to be convinced, because I'm pretty apathetic this year when it comes to the Super Bowl, which is a real shame. Anyways, make sure you like this video, subscribe so you never miss another episode of Generation Orange. And Generation Orange family, we will be in touch. There is still a lot more Broncos football to discuss before the season officially wraps up, so don't mark us off of your calendars. But that being said, it's been an incredible season sharing this with you guys. It has made it such meaningful and it's just totally different perspective of the game as a viewer and as somebody who just consumes football content. You guys have made it so much sweeter, and for that, I know I speak for my dad and I. We are eternally grateful. We can't wait to hopefully be back next season with some more awesome Broncos football content for you guys. Now, that being said, that is all that we have for you today. Make sure you stay tuned because Generation Orange will return. TBD. Go Broncos.
go Broncos.